This is Amber, everyone. I'm sorry she seems really sleepy or kind of even impatient, but she's really not. She's actually very sweet. I'm babysitting her for like 3 weeks because my friend is away. She's still a little kitten because she's only 6 months old, and my friend adopted her when she was 3 months old. Maybe because she used to live in a shelter, so I kind of noticed this hypervigilance and timidness and insecurity in her when it's not even needed. But I also see another side of her, which is really sweet, vulnerable, and dependent, and super trusting. And weirdly, I see a lot of myself in her, and I think a lot of you can actually relate to this. Being around Amber really grounds me and calms me, and I started to feel really bad for myself sometimes because I just had to admit that it feels really good to have a company. Since I live by myself and I don't have a boyfriend right now, and I often push people away because sometimes I know I shouldn't, but I still have this leftover fear from childhood. And nights over the holidays, it had been really quiet. I oftentimes would turn up the volume of the TV, and I would always play something in the background just to create a false feeling that I'm not alone. But the other night I was watching her. She was falling asleep while I was doing some reading. So I just watched her breathing and falling asleep. I suddenly have a vision of me being with someone in the future. I started to long for that bond, that connection, to have someone around at night and to talk to them whenever I want to, just to maybe talk until the morning and then start a new day. And that was a beautiful vision that I never allowed myself to have, because all those years I feel burdened by past experiences. I often felt that I wasn't good enough to have connections. People wouldn't really be there for me. But in that moment I realized, well, those are trauma talks, and I need to really stop letting those narratives affect me and restrict my life choices. And I don't want to be alone forever. I think I'm ready to, maybe step outside my comfort zone a little bit and build new connections, maybe meet some people. I think that is something Amber evoked in me, that loneliness, that longing that I've been suppressing, and the feeling of having connections. After all, human beings are wired for connections. When she first arrived at my house a couple of days ago, she was super scared and timid and hypervigilant, maybe because it was a new environment for her, right? And also cats tend to be very sensitive to noises, like sudden movements and sounds and light. But you could tell that she was extremely scared, so I had to spend a lot of time sitting by her side and just touching her and making her feel more secure and just trust that I'm not going to hurt her. She stayed that way for quite a while. So it came to me that I've heard my friends and people talking about, how pets from shelters, from wandering from the streets, they could be really hypervigilant and scared and insecure, just like how human beings, if you have gone through this chaotic, unsafe environment, you tend to be this way as well. So that kind of just reminded me of how hypervigilant I often show up to be when it's not even needed. I was brought home for the first time by my uncle after my mom passed away, and I just hid behind him all the time. I couldn't speak up. I was so scared, so I always hid in my room. I would constantly scan the environment for any kind of threats or just tiny bit of movements, because in my heart it was filled with chaos. You could really relate to it, because that kind of chaos is how I felt when I was living with my narcissistic dad, who had this humongous temper. But in reality, I was pretty safe because my uncle was really loving. So I kept that kind of hypervigilance even if I didn't want to, but I felt like it has become a part of me that I couldn't really shake off. Any tiny bit of trigger could just put me back to that mode immediately. I think that really touched me and made me have more empathy for her and for me and for people who have had difficult childhood, so I really couldn't express enough like how much I want to support us through those difficult experiences. So I think talking about this is a way of acknowledging this pain and acknowledging the way we are right now. Amber is also the most doggiest cat I've ever known in my life. I remember the first time I saw her when my friend dropped her off. After a few minutes, when I called out like Amber, and she would just really happily like run to me and just lean her against and rub against my foot. And she was kind of just, you know, constantly mewing so that I could hold her and touch her and soothe her. She seems overly trusting, overly dependent, but also super innocent. And that also reminded me of when we're around children, that's how they behave, right? They have never been hurt before. They trust the world to be safe, so they are like open book. They are super open to new connections. I honestly don't remember the last time I felt this carefree, this unburdened, like a little child who has never been hurt before and who's just completely open to the world without being worried of getting hurt. So I think that threw me into thinking that what have childhood trauma done to us? That is why I think a lot of people cannot afford to relax and have fun and chill, because when we're having fun, there's always voice in the back of our head saying like, you need to watch out, you need to be careful, you know, what if bad things happen, you know, this is doomed to go bad. And we feel burdened by those voices, and automatically our behaviors change. The pattern I observed in Amber is that whenever she feels safe and relaxed, she tends to be curious. In the outside world, she tends to not focus on herself and be hypervigilant. So she would probably chase after the shadow cast by the sun. She would probably, you know, watch out for the noises, like sounds from the door cracking, or just have fun with me, just play with my hair stuff. But whenever she's scared, she's in this survival mode, she restricts herself, she frees, she gives up having fun, exploring, because staying safe and staying alive is the priority that she has to focus right now. And that's how human beings are all the time. We isolate ourselves to stay safe. We push people away. We're afraid of getting hurt because all those behaviors are coming from our survival mode. That's our survival instincts, right? But we seem to carry a lot of shame around isolating ourselves. We feel that there is something wrong with us, but honestly it's because of survival instincts. We didn't do anything wrong. It's not like we're not charming or attractive. It's just those bad experiences from the past make us scared, so we have to retrieve to protect ourselves. But once we become more secure, once we have healed to a certain level, we naturally would shift out of this survival mode and start to be curious and start to be more aggressive and boldly expressing what we need and creating what we want. And that is the ultimate goal of healing, to live our life to the fullest. And the first step is to feel more secure within ourselves so that we can change the relationship, the perceived unsafety in relationships. Amber would really love to say goodbye, but she's busy sleeping. So I guess I'll see you next time. Bye bye.